Welcome back, Year 12. We're picking up where we left off. George Orwell was asking four very important questions of the reader, or the writer, as they are. If you're reading this, you're doing so that you can write. He was telling the writer to ask themselves these questions. What am I trying to say? What words will express it? What image or idiom will make it clearer, and is this image fresh enough to have an effect? He also goes on, I think we covered those four, he also goes on to say, and he will probably ask himself two more. Could I put it more shortly? Have I said anything that is avoidably ugly? Now the second one's a bit tricky. You've got to have an ear for the music of your language a little bit, the poetry of it. Are you using a word that's a little bit stubborn or hard to understand or doesn't sound very nice, for example? But the first one's quite easy. It's about word economy. Could I put it more shortly? You can look up word economy if you don't know what I mean by that. It's basically the efficiency of your language. Have you used 20 words to say something that could be easily said in 5? Have you used 5 long words to say something that could easily be said in 5 shorter and more direct ones? This is really important for you guys. It's the heart of good writing is to be economical. You're buying the trust of your reader by showing them that you can say something directly and plainly without mucking around. Here's some curious little things. Sentient plants. I feel like they hold, albumin pearls. Valuable botanical pearls, which will surely get me into trouble from the Sentinels, so I'm just going to leave it. Sorry guys. I'm not going to get into a lot of strife at this point. I'm just trying to get my copper and move on. So while I'm mining, I'll start reading the next part. But you are not obliged to go to all this trouble. Orwell's being sarcastic here, by the way. I know that his language is quite straightforward. Might be hard if you're reading this to pick up on the sarcasm, I'm not sure, but this is very much sarcastic. You're not obliged to go to all this trouble. You can shirk it by simply throwing your mind open and letting the ready-made phrases come crowding in. They will construct your sentences for you, even think your thoughts for you to a certain extent. And at need they will perform the important service of partially concealing your meaning even from yourself. It is at this point that the special connection between politics and the debasement of language becomes clear. So that's kind of like a more forcefully stated version of the title of the piece. Politics and the debasement of English language, and that's really what this is all about, the debasement of English. As you can see, I've got plenty of fuel for my terrain manipulator. I won it from the pirate battle earlier, magnetized ferrite, so I can collect all of this copper. And again, you can kind of gloss over this part if you want. I think, again, as I've said before, you can successfully reflect on his comments about how to make your language clearer without, really integrating with his theories about why this bad writing is so bad for political discourse. But, again, you've got to come up with some idea. And for your upcoming assessment task in week 8, this idea is meant to be derived from or extending out of ideas from these pieces, and this is a big idea that you can write about. In what ways is the language of your political world debased, and what are the implications of that? You could turn it into discursive writing. You could turn it into a really poignant and pointed, purposeful piece of short fiction as well. I've got to build a base computer, so I'm going to run somewhere further away from the Sentinel. He's checking out the damage I did to his beautiful land. I feel like as soon as I build the base computer, again there's going to be a storm. It's part of the kind of extended tutorial sequence of the game. Chromatic metal. I need to build it from a refiner. I might find a cave to start doing this where it's a bit safer, so I'll just wander looking for a cave while I read. In our time, it is broadly true that political writing is bad writing. I mean, in our time as well, I think that's mostly true. Where it is not true, it'll generally be found that the writer is some kind of rebel, expressing his private opinions and not a party line. Orthodoxy, of whatever colour, seems to demand a lifeless, imitative style. The political dialects to be found in pamphlets, leading articles, manifestos, white papers, and the speeches of undersecretaries do, of course, vary from party to party. But they are all alike in that one almost never finds in them a fresh, vivid, homemade turn of speech. He really loves his fresh, vivid, homemade turns of speeches. He keeps talking about it. I do think it is really important for language, but I also do think that in some cases it's not necessary. For some styles of writing, it's not that important. In my highlighting rainbow of this essay, I've highlighted that one red, and when I've highlighted something red, it usually means I'm a little bit critical of it. So, I don't necessarily always think that that's the best criticism of every political paper, nor it is the biggest. You look at sometimes Donald Trump and he can conjure an interesting anecdote from his life, sometimes with great imagery. That's not the problem with what he says. That's not necessarily, why he deserves our scorn. Now, you remember last time I was looking for sulfur. This is cool. I like these. It's a little outcropping of all the sulfur I could need. Sorry, sodium, not sulfur. You know what, guys? I think I'm going to go back to my ship and find the third planet in this system to do the next part, because these sentinels are they're a huge hassle. It's not worth me running away and dealing with it. It's hard to concentrate. So I'm just going to, there's a little bit left there, but I'm just going to head back to my ship. I do think this is a beautiful planet, but it's also it's also a dangerous one. But there is safety in the caves. So I can come down here, build my refiner, potentially make some chromatic metal. Oh, my refiner's back at my ship anyway. Okay, change of plans. When one watches some tired hack on the platform mechanically repeating similar phrases, bestial atrocities, iron heel, blood-stained tyranny, free peoples of the world, stand shoulder to shoulder, one often has a curious feeling that one is not watching a living human being, but rather some kind of dummy. A feeling which suddenly becomes stronger at moments when the light catches the speaker's spectacles and turns them into blank discs which seem to have no eyes behind them. This passage, and I think there's two paragraphs here that I might... Something just exploded back there. This game's getting weird. I haven't seen a lot of this stuff. I haven't played in a while, and there's been a couple of little updates. So I'm kind of running the gauntlet while I'm trying to talk about this. But this is a really important passage for those of you who want to do discursive writing. Read these two paragraphs, this one and the next one, well. Because Nessa has argued, I think, that... that this essay is discursive. It's a discursive essay. I disagree. I don't really think it is. I think it's more persuasive. And as for discursive writing, of the quality of discursive writing out there, it's not especially good. It's kind of, by what we consider discursive, it has some of the features, but not especially, in a way that I would find ideal. However, these two paragraphs are quite good, and he uses imagery. Imagery is a very important part of discursive writing, and he uses imagery in these two sections in a way that he doesn't otherwise in the essay, and that is more than just an offhand simile to make his point. It's not just a little simile. Here he's actually evoking a scenario, a fictional image of a political speaker blank on the stage, speaking almost without eyes behind the sheen of his glasses. It's a really effective image, and it extends beyond a simile into a couple of sentences. This is not altogether fanciful, he excuses himself. A speaker who uses that kind of phraseology has gone some distance towards turning himself into a machine. The appropriate noises are coming out of his larynx, but his brain is not involved as it would if he were choosing his words for himself. If the speech he is making is one that he is accustomed to make over and over again, he may be almost unconscious of what he is saying. And as one is when one utters the responses in church. And this reduced state of consciousness, if not indispensable, is at any rate favourable to political conformity. The end of that there, I kind of feel, is a little bit confused. This state is favourable to conformity. I thought he was kind of arguing that this state was conformity. But I like that he conjures this image on the stage of the dummy-like mechanical speaker of political language. This is something you should be thinking to do in your discursive writing. If you've got an abstract point to make it through scenario, make it through the concrete imagery. And he talks so much about concrete imagery that sometimes, it's so obvious he's not following his own instructions. But in these two little paragraphs, he's doing quite well. The next one, I think, is even more powerful for a couple of reasons. I think the next one's even more powerful. In our time, political speech and writing are largely the defence of the indefensible. Things like the continuance of British rule in India, the Russian purges and deportations, the dropping of the atom bombs on Japan, can indeed be defended, but only by arguments which are too brutal for most people to face, and which do not square with the professed aims of political parties. Thus, political language has to consist largely of euphemism, question-begging, and the sheer cloudy vagueness. Okay, so there he sets up his premise. Kind of like, you've got to be vague to make a political point in our time, because usually political purposes are malicious ones. And how he makes clear, the fact that concrete writing doesn't sit with this is because concrete writing humanizes. And in his next little bit, he gives the human aspect to what can be clouded by political writing. Always, as a literary writer, as a crafted writer, you've got to be finding the human aspect. You can't just simply, be making a message. You must necessarily, there's the planet I visited, Regeneros, there's the one I was just on, which I haven't named yet, maybe I'll do that in a bit, and I'm going to try and find, it looks like there's one hidden behind this planet, so we're going to curve around it, and hopefully we'll, yeah, there we go, there's one behind there. Not sure what it's going to be like, we'll soon find out. In this next section, he really humanizes what is masked by political language. Defenseless villages are bombarded from the air, the inhabitants driven out into the countryside, the cattle machine gunned, the huts set on fire with incendiary bullets. This is called pacification. Millions of peasants are robbed of their farms and sent trudging along the roads with no more than they can carry. This is called transfer of population, or rectification of frontiers. People are imprisoned for years without trial, or shot in the back of the neck, or sent to die of scurvy in Arctic lumber camps. The detail he gives and the imagery he creates, that's the stuff that humanizes these vague terms like, quote, transfer of population. It's really important that he, and this is the best, the whole essay. This is his best sequence, because it really shows unambiguously the kind of language that can mask, inhumanity. And for a module like this, the craft of writing, we want to show that you can humanize your writing so that you don't turn into a political writer like some of those that would propagandize and create, a mask to veil the inhumanities of what happens in the world. It is an inhuman world in a lot of ways, and it's the job of the writer to, it's the job of the writer to correct that. Alright, let me destroy this second pirate. Fortunately, when I blast one of these guys, I get my shields back. And a little bit of magnetized ferrite, which can be useful. I don't have big ambitions for this planet. It looks pretty crap. In fact, I can scan it and it'll tell me about it. It's got copper on it, metal on it. It's a life-incompatible planet. There you go. I can't wait to visit this life-incompatible planet. However, I do have a bit of launch thruster. I don't have any pulse engine fuel, or I can fill it up with a little bit. I'm going to go down and check it out and give it a name anyway. And then I might give one more stab at that Sentinel planet, maybe. Yeah. Oh, I forgot to pick up my... this is how dumb I am. I forgot to pick up my my refinery. That's why I was going back in the first place. Anyway, onward and upwards. People are imprisoned for years without trial, or shot in the back of the neck, or sent to die of scurvy in the Arctic lumber camps. It's the detail, not just shot, but shot in the back of the neck, that makes you see it. It's not just an internment camp, it's an Arctic lumber camp. Every, 2 words just suddenly bring it to life for us. This is called elimination of unreliable elements. Such phraseology is needed if one wants to name things without calling up mental pictures of them. Consider, for instance, some comfortable English professor defending Russian totalitarianism. He cannot say outright, "I believe in killing off your opponents when you can get good results by doing so." Probably, therefore, he will say something like this, blah, 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 blah. And therein is the parody of the English professor who wants to defend the indefensible by using vague language. I won't bother with reading it. The inflated style is itself a kind of euphemism. A mass of Latin words fall upon the facts like soft snow, blurring the outlines and covering up all the details. When he says Latin words, by the way, he doesn't mean words that are still limited to the Latin language. He just means words with a Latin root, which he has a particular disdain for, for whatever reason. Yeah, this is it. This place sucks. This is lame-o. Lame-o. And thus I dub it Lamos. It wasn't really worth it, was it? Fortunately, it's quite close to the other nice planet here, so I'll head back. The great enemy of clear language is insincerity. When there is a gap between one's real and one's declared aims, one turns, as it were, instinctively to long words and exhausted idioms, like a cuttlefish squirting out ink. For some reason, of all of Orwell's similes that he uses to kind of cap off his points, kind of, forcefully, I like this one best, because the more I think about it, the more it kind of resonates a little bit. What is a cuttlefish that squirts out ink? It's in defense, and that's what bad language often is. For you guys, I know it is. When you're writing an essay and you don't know that much, bad language is your defense mechanism. It's as clear as day when you don't actually know much about what's going on, so you use convoluted language to kind of hide the fact that you're a little bit uncertain about the content of what you're writing about. It doesn't trick. It really doesn't trick us. It's more and more obvious. I like this because the more I think it's a defense mechanism, but also it's just an appropriate imagery because we're talking about copy. Copy the words on page, typed white ink on black page. So it's this ink is the defense mechanism, like the ink of a cuttlefish is its defense mechanism. Yeah, I like the simile there, and it at first it stops you and makes you think, what? But that's kind of the strength of the simile. Good language has to be a bit challenging. You can't just swallow it, thoughtlessly and expect to be producing a meaningful effect in the reader. You've got to make them stop and think sometimes. Challenge them with some sophisticated vocabulary. I'm not going to try and break in here, or I will be completely destroyed by these prowling dog robots, which you can see somewhere. In our age, there is no such thing as keeping out of politics. All issues are political issues, and politics itself is a mass of lies, evasions, folly, hatred, and schizophrenia. That's a pretty strongly worded statement. I actually prefer the prior bit, which says, in our age there's no such thing as keeping out of politics. I don't remember what this is in context of, but I remember another similar quote recently that says, no politics is politics. If you say you're someone with no politics, that means you're taking a political position, which is usually the position of forgiving the ignorant side of politics, and forgiving ignorance as politics, claiming a lack of responsibility as your politics. Because that is, a kind of political stance. You can't just say, I'm not into politics, man, I don't give a crap. That's a bad excuse in the 21st century. It means you're excusing and you're taking the position that not giving a crap about others and the world around you is forgivable. When the general atmosphere is bad, language must suffer. I should expect to find, this is a guess which I have not sufficient knowledge to verify, that the German, Russian and Italian languages have all deteriorated in the last 10 or 15 years as a result of dictatorship. Now, he hasn't even bothered to do a bit of research, and this kind of, it shows that there's a limited purpose and utility of this essay. It's not a particularly well researched or formulated piece of writing. At times I've thought to myself, was this a speech? Was this written as a speech? I mean, I think it's a bit long to be a speech, and maybe you could argue a bit boring to be a speech. But at times I feel like it's got that kind of spur of the moment quality to it. When he says, I don't know enough about German or Russian language to say if it's deteriorated, maybe that's a cop-out. Couldn't he have asked someone? Surely Orwell has a couple of German or Russian buddies. Yes, so continuing on, but if thought corrupts language, language can also corrupt thought. A bad usage can spread by tradition and imitation, even among people who do not know better. The debased language that I have been discussing is in some ways very convenient. Phrases like a not unjustifiable assumption, leaves much to be desired, would serve no good purpose, a consideration which we should do well to bear in mind, are a continuous temptation, a packet of aspirins always at one elbow. You know, these little figures of speech that are handy. I feel like he's repeating himself. Maybe I'm just repeating myself. I think that more likely he's repeating himself. Okay, I'm going to do the maths puzzle right now. 23 times 2 is 46, minus 1 is 45. 45 times 2 is 90, minus 1 is 89. 89 times 2 is 178, minus 1 is 177. 177 times 2, 177 times 2 is going to be something like 340, something like 340 plus, yeah, it's going to have to be 353. It's going to have to be 353. It can't be as high as 392. Can't be as low as 186. Has to be 353. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I feel like he's repeating himself. And to what effect? Look back through this essay and for certain you will find that I have again and again committed the very faults I am protesting against. You know, way to diminish your argument by saying you can't even follow your own rules. You know, let's avoid the temptation of being frustrated with George Orwell. I'm going to find it difficult. Hopefully you guys can avoid the temptation to be frustrated with this essay and pick out the good stuff. I've drawn attention to a lot of the good stuff so far. You know, there is a lot of good stuff. I've kind of got a few pages left. I might leave it for Orwell on that note, and yeah, maybe I'll build my base computer. As I'm saying, yeah, avoid the temptation to be frustrated. There is a lot of good that you can take out of this essay. His diligence in hammering in the point, concrete imagery, concrete imagery, concrete imagery, gets repetitive, but it is one that we need to bang into your heads because, you know, it gets forgotten about. And especially for those of you I've seen who are attempting discursive, it's the first thing that can go in the garbage bin when you're given flexibility. You know, it's like, yes, I have free reign to use convoluted, muddy language with no character, setting, scene, or, you know, imagery. That's not how it works, sadly. You really do have to still work very hard to put that stuff in. And to do that, you need to... you really need to work. You need to work for it. And he forces himself to do it, obviously. And maybe that's what you need to do for your writing. Maybe you just need to force yourself to throw in a simile, to throw in an image, to stop your paragraph and say, has this been concrete enough? Has my reader seen a picture? Have they evoked a picture in their mind of a person or a situation, of something horrific or something beautiful? You know, have they been surprised by the specific detail of something I've given to them and the imagery with which I've evoked it? You know, if you're not doing that, stop. Make yourself do it routinely as like a beat to your writing. You know, you could say that his similes have a kind of rhythmic quality in how often they come up. You know, you need that rhythmic quality in the way you create your imagery. You need it. Alright, let's get this metal plate. I'm really wasting such time in this game today. You know, I've left my portable refiner behind. I've gone to a planet that sucked. You know, I found my copper with nothing to do with it yet. Gee whiz. It's not working out too well. But we can make something good of this, I'm sure. We can do it. Oxygen. I feel like I must have used up my oxygen when I went to that crappy planet. It's usually a relaxing game. It's probably not very... I'm enjoying this, I've got to say. I'm now looking forward. I'm doing this on Wednesday afternoon. I've got sports off at the moment because I'm going to be doing soccer on the weekends. So I've been looking forward to coming home for this, for the purposes of doing this. So I'm having fun. I don't think anyone's actually listening anymore. My last video had 30 minutes of view time, which means either one person watched it all or 2 people. Hopefully, at one point, you guys will find this stuff effective. I'll let that run while this sentinel hassles me. Ugh. This looks like oxygen over there. I'm gonna need oxygen for life support. So what's the name of this planet? That's the question. We've had, we're in the Orwell system. We've got Lamos and Regeneros. You know, we had that image of the cuttlefish spraying ink. Maybe this is Cuddleos? Nah, that's lame. Constructos. It's got to be Constructos because I feel like the game's teasing me into building building my base here, and we've got all this concrete construction of imagery. So we'll call it Constructos. Okay, so that was my refiner. I've now got enough enough chromatic metal to build a base computer. So I'll do that quickly, and I'm sure that's going to be enough time. I might have already run out. I might be talking to myself here. I've got it set for half an hour. Hopefully I'm not. Okay, here's a landing pad. This is a cool thing. This is a hologram tower, holocomms tower, where I can contact different plot characters in the plot when I need to. I'm just gonna run, get clear of the sentinel, build my base computer. Ooh, this is a nice spot. Look at this little plateau up here. I'm gonna need carbon. Look at that big tree. Oh, bloody robots. They're everywhere. So yes, I will ask you, I suppose, you know, as much as I'm probably likely to, I'm definitely going to finish this essay. They'll have one more episode to read the last couple of pages. But if you are enjoying this, please let me know. You know, leave a comment. It is important to me to feel like I've connected with you guys in this part of the unit, the politics in the English language, because I feel like, you know, maybe you guys missed out. It felt like you were a bit unclear on how to grapple with it, and I'd hate for that to be the case. Okay, so now I'm able to build a base here. I can settle down. I'm not of the feeling that a base is an important part of this game. Some people really do feel that way. But me personally, when the game first came out, there were no bases. It was more about a nomadic journey through the galaxy. Whoa, hello, buddy. Which I like the feeling of. You could never go back. You know, either because the map system was so poorly designed, either deliberately or not, you could never go back to those first planets. So as much as you felt emotionally attached to the first planet you ever visited, for example, you know, it was impossible to go back. You had to keep moving. Nowadays you can have a base and you can transport there from anywhere. It kind of diminishes that sense of scale of the universe, the beautiful, beautiful sense of scale. I'm going to get myself some wood because the storm is coming, I'm sure. Construct a shelter. Alright, let's get my Fortnite skills going. No one's gonna be able to get me now. I'll be safe. Oh no, I don't have enough wood. Sentinel, go away. I just need wood. The sun's coming up and I need wood to protect myself. Go away. You can actually get a gun in this game. My laser can theoretically kill that thing, but it's not very practical. It's easier, as I say, just to run away. But you can upgrade, you know, there's lots of upgrade paths for rifles and shotguns and stuff like that. You know, so that you can actually kill these things. As soon as you kill one, 4 more come back to hassle you. It's not really worth it, as long as you can keep yourself alive. Ooh, superheated rainstorm. Hopefully I got enough for a roof. Yep. And a final wall. There we go. And here we are. I'm safe. Safe from the storm, which will be coming presently. I'll leave it at that. Sorry for the anticlimactic ending. Oh, you're gonna come visit me, are you? I don't think you can hurt me in here. You can't see me. Can't see me, he's searching for me. I'm sorry for the anticlimactic ending. I kind of got sick of Orwell's repetition and the way he's... You know, there is something really important out of it. That little passage of 2 paragraphs, great for discursive writing, and he gives the best example of how to use his advice in those 2 paragraphs. So when we get back, we'll finish it off. Maybe a little recap, and again, I hope you enjoyed.